Senator, do you think, is there anything else that you can do beyond demanding the certifications you were mentioning or continuing to jawbone the administration?
I would, in case the Biden administration is listening, it would be great to get the Taliban to the peace table and end the war honorably for the women of Afghanistan and safe for us. I just don't see how you can do that until they comply with the conditions of rejecting al-Qaeda and ISIS. They haven't. Over 3,500, I think, Afghan security forces have been killed during the negotiations. I think the Taliban have elements that want to move on. They want to be part of the country. I think they've given up taking it over. But there's some pretty hardcore folks. So what I would advise the Biden administration, as you continue to work with the UN and others to end the war, that you reinforce to the Taliban that there are conditions that matter to us, that an international peacekeeping force will be present. Because the world is at risk here. Look what happened in the Opera House, or the movie theater, I can't remember. I think it's the Music Hall in Paris. That came because we left Iraq. They formed Safe Haven in Syria, and they came after the French people. So I'd like the world to know, our NATO allies, that you're at risk as much as we are. They've hit you as much, if not more, than we have. And here's what's so sad. I've been called by 3 major allies in the last month urging me to urge President Biden to stay the course because they would. There is no desire by NATO to leave. We're talking about, we're up to 140,000 at one time, I think. Now we're down to less than 5. So I'm hoping they will look at the conditions of the agreement. Taliban are not meeting them. And when they realize they're not, impose those conditions on the Taliban and put back on the ground an international force to make sure Afghanistan doesn't fall apart.
Senator, you mentioned that you're certain that the military opposes the Biden plan. I was just wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about how you're certain of that, and are you saying that the DoD opposes this plan?
I'm saying that they'll salute smartly when the president makes a decision. I know there was a big discussion and President Biden listened intently. I know where the military has been on this. I know what they were telling President Trump, that until the Taliban become a more reliable partner, until they renounce terrorism, al-Qaeda and ISIS, until they stop trying to undermine, the peace process, that we cannot leave. And I am certain that Secretary Pompeo put these conditions in, and nobody's certified they have been met. So that's the whole point here. I'm confident that the low-risk strategy was to have a residual counterterrorism force until the peace deal actually became a deal and it was being implemented and was working. But I'm sure the military will do whatever they're told by President Biden. He has the authority as Commander-in-Chief to do this. I don't question that, but he has an obligation under our law to inform Congress of the risk and to make certifications. We have the right to ask that of any administration. I was going to ask it of the Trump administration. So I want you to know that this is an unforced error from my point of view. This was not the preferred route. This was not the preferred route for President Trump. And when President Trump set a hard deadline of May 1st, it wasn't hard. It was a conditions-based deadline.
Do you think that another 9/11-like incident is more likely as a result of this?
That's what they say. The Afghan Study Group. I've talked to commanders in Afghanistan. What's their big nightmare? That the safe haven and sanctuaries that have been denied because we have counterterrorism forces to whack them will be gone, and they will begin to reconstitute along the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And the desire to hit the homeland is the greatest it's ever been. And over time, as conditions in Afghanistan deteriorate, the likelihood of being able to project force outside of Afghanistan goes up. We saw that in Iraq and Syria. When they can plan and prepare and train, they deploy their forces outside the region.
You've said repeatedly that you think that there aren't the right conditions to leave right now. And so I'm wondering, are you okay with keeping troops in Afghanistan indefinitely until the conditions are right? How long would, in your mind, be too long?
I think that's not the question. The question is, when you leave, what do you leave behind? If you believe, like I do, that radical Islam would would kill a million Americans if they could, you would deny them that capability. We've got troops in Japan, we've got troops in Germany. We haven't had a casualty in the last year. In fairness to President Biden, if the Taliban bail out and don't keep the word, which I think they won't, then they'll start attacking the forces we have. So there's no great options here. So if you leave, say, 4,000 or 5,000 people, they will be in a non-permissive environment, and we'll have to go after the Taliban. That is better than leaving the country where the enemy can reconstitute and hit us in multiple places, including America. So that's why you don't have great choices. But the least risky choice is to keep American military personnel with the intelligence community involved in Afghanistan until there's a genuine reconciliation, until the Taliban and the Afghan people can find a way to move forward together. It is not democracy I'm pushing under this concept. It is making sure that the country doesn't become the safe haven it was 20 years ago. And what we're doing, according to the people I've talked to, is setting the conditions for Afghanistan to go backward, not forward. For the last 20 years, it really hasn't been used as a safe haven to attack America, because we've had forces over there to prevent that. So I would tell the American people, listen to your military, put the Afghans out into the fight. They're dying by the thousands compared to us. Reduce your aid until they do better, but never lose sight that Afghanistan is about us. And on September 11th, 2021, we will all remember that day that are old enough to remember it. And here's what I want to remind you of. Afghanistan is still about us 20 years later. So I wanted to close with this. This is what they're capable of doing when we ignore the threat of the enemy. Remember the famous statements being made that the warning lights are blinking red? As we ignored the buildup of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, this is what happened. This is what happened. Flight 93, where Americans on that flight were the first to fight back. What makes you think this won't happen again if we create the conditions for it to happen again? What's it worth to Americans to make sure this never happens again? Is it worth it to us as a nation to keep the fight over there so it doesn't come here? The risk that our soldiers take is to protect their homeland. President Biden went to Arlington today. I'm glad he did. I've got some friends there from Iraq and Afghanistan. This has been a very long war. The bottom line is they died in defense of their nation, not in some endless war. They died to make sure this never happens again. And I can assure you the likelihood of this and this happening again is going through the roof after President Biden's decision today, if it's not changed, because he's setting Afghanistan on a path to deteriorate rather quickly, and for the enemy, radical Islam, to reconstitute. And it can all be avoided with a minimal commitment compared to the past. And I'm expecting the certifications owed to the Congress to be delivered. And one final warning about that. If you do not comply with the law as written, and it wasn't written for a Democrat or a Republican, it's written for the Congress as a whole, then the Senate will be a very difficult place to do business. I feel like I owe it to all those who have died to fight as hard as I can to make sure they have not died in vain. And more importantly, equally importantly, is to make sure that Americans do not die senselessly. Soldiers take on the risk. They know why they're there. These people were defenseless. Let's keep the fight over there. Let's keep it in their backyard, not ours. And I can tell you, Afghanistan has changed. The people of Afghanistan have seen a better way of life. And I know it's been long, I know it's been hard, but pulling the plug now is going to take us backward, not forward. And the good news is we can do with a few thousand troops what it took 100,000 to do. That the Afghan people are more capable, and they have died by the thousands. And I just think it's in our interest to see this thing through until we can have an honorable and secure end to this war. Thank you.